Thank you so much for joining us for CCFA's fall webinar, Being Intimate with IBD. I'll be the moderator for tonight. My name is Kaylee. A little bit about myself. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease about 4 years ago. This month actually marks my diagnosis anniversary month. My Crohn's disease and my journey as a patient has really influenced my future career aspirations. I'm a third-year pre-medical student at the University of Florida. My major is actually in nutritional sciences, and I'm minoring in disabilities and society. For the viewers that might not be aware, Crohn's disease is a type of inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD for short. It's an autoimmune inflammatory condition that causes inflammation all throughout the gastrointestinal tract. So as you can imagine, it really influences many different aspects of patients' everyday lives, logistics, scheduling, and relationships. And that's what we hope to talk about tonight. We hope to pull from different personal experiences from panel members and utilize our amazing topic specialists on hand. So without further ado, I'm going to open it up to the rest of the panel and let them introduce themselves.
Yeah, so my name is Ty. I'm 21 years old. I go to the University of Florida also. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2008. It has also impacted my future career choices and whatnot. I currently study biotechnology here and have been doing research for the past 5 years now on IBD. And this is my girlfriend, Paige, who also goes to the University of Florida. And I'll turn it over to her.
Hi, as you said, I'm Paige. I'm also 21. I'm a senior at the University of Florida studying industrial and systems engineering. I do not have Crohn's, but have been dating him for about a year or a little over a year. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can go. I'm Emily Morgan. I am a senior at the University of North Carolina, so I'm a senior as well, but not at Florida. I was diagnosed in 2008 as well. I was 13, but I have ulcerative colitis, so it's a little bit different than what Ty has, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit as the webinar goes on. But I'm a psychology major and social and economic justice minor. Having colitis has also influenced my career decision. I'm hoping to go into nonprofit, maybe even specifically the CCFA, so we'll see.
And I'm Michelle Maddox. I am a clinical psychologist at Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri. And I am dedicated programmatically entirely to our IBD program within the hospital. So I work with all of the patients that we see, all of the families that we see, whether it's at the time of diagnosis or really at any point in their lives before they transition into adult care.
So Michelle, while we have you talking, could you talk a little bit about just the challenges that IBD patients generally talk to you about when it comes to relationships and being intimate?
Sure. So, there's a lot of different issues and challenges that young adults with IBD can experience. When it comes to relationship and intimacy, some young adults with IBD typically express concerns about when to disclose their IBD diagnosis, how much to share about their IBD diagnosis, and then also how to share those details about their IBD. The symptoms of IBD, as you all well know, alone can be unpleasant, unpredictable, and even potentially embarrassing, especially when we're talking about symptoms like frequent trips to the bathroom, gas, diarrhea, incontinence, those types of things. And so some young adults don't feel comfortable sharing such intimate details with others, especially when it comes to relationships. Another thing, some youth with IBD are concerned about being able to keep up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend because their daily function and activity levels are limited by things like abdominal pain, fatigue, or concerns about not making it to the bathroom on time, or even just needing to use the bathroom multiple times. Some other concerns and challenges that I have heard being expressed with are related to sexual intimacy. So, for example, if young adult patients with IBD have an ostomy, then there can be the concern that it might be a turnoff or that it might get in the way if they're trying to be intimate with a partner, whether that be boyfriend or girlfriend. So similarly, some young adults with IBD express concerns or worry that the presence of a fissure, for example, might either cause pain or discomfort during sex, or again, that it might be a turnoff to their partner. A couple of other things that I've had conversations about with young adults with IBD, again, related to having an ostomy, is the process of emptying the bag. Possibly in the presence of an intimate partner, that process can be, it can feel intrusive, or it's very personal, it's very intimate, and so there's certainly a vulnerability that comes with that process. And then, I think overall, the very nature of IBD, the fact that it pertains to one's bowel movements, right? It's typically a very private thing. It's not something that we love talking about. And so what that means is that IBD patients often find themselves in a very vulnerable situation, especially if you need support or assistance from your partner.
Yeah, definitely. Communication is a really big aspect of forming relationships and being intimate and open with somebody. Ty or Emily, do you have any personal experience with these kind of struggles?
So the way we actually first met was immediately getting over that hump. She knew me before we were together and whatnot. She knew that I had Crohn's and kind of what it was. But really what was the kicker for me to want to date her was because I was in the hospital once or I was having surgery, and my parents came up to be here and be my support team and whatnot throughout the surgery and the recovery process. However, she turned to them the day that they got up there and after I got out of surgery or something like that and said to them, "It's okay, you guys can stay at home, I'll stay here overnight and make sure that the nurses are on top of their game and everything's not going awry." That was before we were together, and because of that, I was like, well, I can't turn that down now. So we kind of got into the hump of, what is Crohn's, and this is a really bad time. How do I explain it? Because she saw me at my worst. But then I had Mr. Tough Guy who thought he could tough it out at restaurants and all of that. So on our first date, or one of our first few dates, I took her to a nice Italian restaurant where she got a really great meal and I got a phenomenal meal, except I didn't try it because I knew it was just going to hurt me. So I wasted my money on it on top of wasting a phenomenal experience that we could have started off on a better note. And that was on my fault because I didn't communicate well. And I think really getting over the challenges is understanding that we have this disease, it's ours now. And so because it's ours, we should be able to tell these significant others. And I think that will also really show us who and who isn't right to be the significant other or
not. I know for me, when I was going through, I guess, having my initial symptoms back when I was first diagnosed, I had a boyfriend at the time. And we had been dating, I guess, for, a year at that time. And which I was pretty, I was 13, but he was older. He was, I guess, 16 at the time. He was 3 years older. And I just remember he knew that I was sick because he knew that I was going to a lot of doctor's appointments, and we were on the same swim team. That's how we met. And, obviously if you're not there, someone has to have a legitimate excuse for why they're not at practice. And that was when I was kind of forced to be open, kind of like Ty said. It's a little bit similar to their situation. It was nothing that I could hide. So I kind of was letting him know, but it was very hard for me because I wasn't sure how much I should share because, like Michelle mentioned, it's not exactly, I guess, something that a lot of people are open about. And I didn't want to say, oh, well, I started feeling bad and I noticed that there was blood in my stool. So I went, I told my mom. And so that was I guess it took me, I don't think I ever actually told him that thinking back on it now, but I, pretty much said that my stomach would hurt a lot and that I needed to go to the doctor. And then I remember when I had my first colonoscopy, the whole clean out thing is the whole day before, and I wasn't in school and I wasn't in swim practice. And then I wasn't in swim practice the next day, and having just to explain that to not only him, my significant other at the time, but also friends as well. For me, it was just something that I kind of wanted to hide, but I think luckily I'm a very open person, so I didn't want to hide it. So I kind of told everyone pretty much up front, and that was easy for me. But I think what I've noticed is since I've come into college, not everyone knows. Not everyone knows you. Not everyone knows your parents. So a lot of people kind of knew that I was sick from my parents. I'm from a very small town. And so I guess that kind of came easily because I think my friends' parents had heard from their parents what it was. But now coming into college, it's all new people. And some people, you find that there's a right time to tell them, and others it kind of just comes up in conversation because you'll be in a restaurant or you'll be, now that I'm 21, I've met people and you're at a bar and you don't drink beer. They're kind of like, why don't you drink beer? It's just little ways that it comes into the conversation. But then what I found is kind of hard is like when you're in a situation, especially like a restaurant or a bar or somewhere busy, and you tell someone, oh, I have Crohn's or colitis, I would say majority of their time, they're kind of like, what's that? And so then that comes into the question of how much do I tell them? How much do I need to tell them? How much are they okay with me telling them? And I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of people is kind of knowing those boundaries because everyone's going to be different because I have people who will end up asking me more. And then I have people who are kind of like, oh, okay, like I know someone that has that. But even if they know someone that has it, they have no idea what it is. And then I find out later that they don't know what it is. So my whole thing is kind of like, I kind of warn them. I tell them, I kind of say that it's a digestive disorder just to kind of, that's very elementary, but it's just kind of like it gets them prepared. Everyone knows kind of what that entails, or, I at least assume so. And then I kind of just go off of the vibe that that person gives me. And a lot of times I do find that people ask questions if they want to know, and that's when I am going to be more open. But I guess, like Ty said, I think telling people, especially people that you're close to or people that you can see yourself becoming close to, whether they're friendships or, relationships as in like more than friends, that it's pretty much easier to get to be out and open right out of the gate rather than it getting to a time where it's kind of like things are going to the next level to have to tell them.
Yeah, there have been times when it has gotten, when we first started being intimate and whatnot. But there were times that was, like I said, when I was at my worst, and when I was at my worst, I couldn't perform in an intimate situation, and that was a really hard thing for myself to be able to explain, that I wouldn't be able to have this moment with right now, right here, right now type of thing, but it will be able to happen later down the road. Just I wasn't feeling well, and so to be able to explain that took a little bit of courage, but once I was able to explain it, it has gotten to the point of where, immediately if I wasn't feeling well that day or whatever, and we are getting intimate and whatnot, she will even turn to me and say, should we not? Because it can be discouraging to myself, and also she doesn't want to see me discouraged, on top of the fact that like that's no fun. And so
I think one of the things that helped me kind of adjust was we met through a mutual friend, and so like when we were just friends, I kind of was told like, oh, this is what he has, like this is kind of what it is. And then I was like, all right, well, like he's a cool kid, like we're getting closer as friends. And so I kind of went online and I just Googled everything about Crohn's and like kind of tried to look up like what are the things that I should be expecting if like we're gonna be close. And so I think that kind of helps. And there definitely are like some things where you're like, oh, like that's kind of like a lot. But you also like once you get closer, you realize that every case is different, so they may not have every symptom. They may have some that are worse and some that don't really make a difference. And I think it actually mentions online that sometimes like sexual intimacy like is not that easy, and so you kind of like go in with like a little sort of expectation of like, okay, like this is where he's at, and then you have to kind of try it out. Like it's okay for you to tell me like if something's wrong or if you don't feel good. Like we don't have to go out to eat. Like we don't have to be intimate. Like if you don't feel good, you don't feel good, and like that's it. So definitely doing your own research helped a lot for me.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't imagine being on the other side of things. Like, it took me a really long time to get diagnosed. So I was diagnosed a lot later than y'all were. I was diagnosed my senior year of high school. And like going through flares, not really knowing what was going on and being taken on and off prednisone, it was really hard for my peers to understand what was going on. So it made me kind of introverted and want to hide my symptoms just because they were the most supportive. You know, girls would think, I was, like having an eating disorder when I was losing weight, and it was just really hurtful. So when I started college and I got like a fresh start, it was actually kind of a big relief for me. And I think the more I'm becoming more open, like with my friends, it adds kind of a new level to relationships. And I found that, my true friends are the ones that are Googling different symptoms and like randomly asking me questions like, oh, have you heard of this medication? Or do you ever experience this? And like, those are my true friends, the one that, actually take the time and effort to learn what IBD is and ask questions. But yeah, I couldn't imagine being on the other side of things. Paige, when you first met Ty, was there anything that you were kind of like unsure about or nervous going into the relationship?
I can't really think of anything off the top of the head. I'm kind of an open person to begin with, and he's the same, so I think that helped. Where like we'll just talk about poop, like it's everyday conversation. We just don't care, so that's helpful. But that's us in particular. I think it's more like trying to get him to like open up more. Like I would look something up and be like, oh, like does this happen to you? And he'd be like, oh, kind of, but like not really talk to me about it. And I'd always be like, come on, like I want you to talk to me, like I want you to be open because that's the only way like I'm gonna understand. I can only learn so much online, so it's more like getting them to realize that like you're there, you're willing to talk about it and get him to like open up to me and like be comfortable with talking about it.
I think one of the difficult things that I saw in her getting through was you can see when you know someone really well, you can see like a squint in their eye differently when they're not telling like the perfect truth and whatnot. Well, so let's go eat Chick-fil-A or something, which is not a good idea for me. But of course it is. Come on, let's go. And then she knows that, slight squint in the eye, that's let's go. But it's really, let's not go. I know you just really want it. That was something also that she had to realize, but it was also really good that she realizes it because she's kind of my second brain. As a college student, I do want to go and get Taco Tuesday with my friends and whatnot, but is that a really good idea when I'm completely stressed out and flaring right now? Probably not the best idea. That's where she comes into play, and she's, the good conscience coming in and saying not to do it.
Ty, you bring up a really good point of trying to draw that balance of wanting to be a quote unquote normal young adult, right? Doing all of the things that everybody else does, but at the same time also taking care of yourself and making sure that you're managing your health appropriately. And I think that's a really, really difficult balance for some young adults, wanting to kind of live that, again, quote unquote normal life, but also at the same time meeting the daily demands of your IBD.
Yeah, I think being on the other side, like once we got close enough, I kind of like figured out like, oh, these are the things he shouldn't be doing. But then, he's like, oh, I want to do it. And I'm like, I don't want to be like the mean person, but like, no, you shouldn't do it. And so you kind of like, you have little like tips about like I'm trying to look out for him, but like he wants like me to be able to do what I want. And you kind of like butt heads a little bit because like you're both looking out for the other person. But I think eventually he just had to get over it. And I mean, you change what your normal is. Like we cook a lot and like we'll eat dinner at home a lot more because that's better for him. And that's just something that you adjust to, like learning what their average day should be like.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's like a really big social component to Crohn's disease. At least for me, I was on a liquid diet for an entire year. So socially, that was really a struggle, like eating out. Sometimes I would just eat out because all my friends were, and I was too embarrassed to explain, listen, I have Crohn's disease. I'm on a liquid diet. I can't eat anything, because I didn't want people that didn't know me as well to start talking, and I would actually be doing more harm than good. So I think, and it's really hard in relationships to put yourself first because you're thinking about the other people involved. But it's definitely really important. Do you think like growing up with IBD, since y'all were diagnosed a little younger, helped with relationships and establishing a better line of communication?
I think so. I have a story that I always kind of tell people when they ask me kind of the social, I guess, challenges of having a chronic illness. Um, I personally, I was in ninth grade, so I had it was still kind of the beginning stages of like having my disease. My medication dosage had been up to where I was taking 3 pills at 3 different times of the day. So I had to take pills with me to school, and I just ate them or took not ate them, took them with lunch. And at the time, everyone in high school, it was cool for the girls to bring purses, and so I kept my pills in my purse, and I had the type of bag where they kind of just sit on the ground and they don't close. That's like, a style of purse. And so there was no zip or anything so you could see into it, which is kind of like, I was kind of asking for it. But I was sitting in class one day, and the guy that sat behind me, and the thing that was that like we're friends now. I know that he didn't necessarily mean anything negative by it, but he kind of, must have seen the pills because it was one of the really big bottles because I was taking 9 pills a day. You have to get a pretty big bottle for that to last you for a few weeks. And he goes, "Oh, Emily's taking drugs." And it's like, I think he was kind of like, being facetious, thought it was funny, didn't mean any harm by it whatsoever. But that was the first time someone had kind of said something in a non-supportive way, or had even just brought it up, because at that point I hadn't told, not everyone knew about it. Only my close friends and my family had known about it. My swim team knew about it. But that's kind of like the things that you learn, that not everyone is going to be 100% accepting and understanding. And another story, I was talking to a younger girl who she got diagnosed in 6th grade, and her parents, we were connected through our parents. And so I was in 9th grade and she was in 6th grade, and I was just kind of talking to her about different things. And one of the things that she brought up is that once her friends saw that she was, sick all the time and couldn't do everything that they had asked her to do, they stopped asking her to hang out. And so, the question being, do you think it was easier? I think me and Ty got lucky because we didn't really have to deal with it in middle school. I think middle school is when people are just mean. And now that girl, I think she's in 10th or 11th grade now. She's doing great. And so I think one of the pros to that is that you figure out who your true friends are. I think Ty mentioned something about that earlier, and that is true. No one was downright cruel to me in 8th grade or in high school, but I definitely figure out who's going to be there to support you, who cares, because it's the people that ask questions, and it's the people who, call you when they know you've been in the hospital, or who the people who even just ask like how you've been, because that's one thing about IBD is that it's definitely a silent illness. And it's the people who do kind of take time to figure that out, because there are people who are just like, you say you're sick, but you're at school all the time. You don't look sick. Like you don't, have a fever or whatever. And so, I had surgery when I was 16, and the hospital that I had surgery was 3 hours away from home. So I had a few people who actually drove to the hospital and came and saw me because I was there for about 6 or 7 days. And obviously it's understandable. I was only 16. Not all 16-year-olds can drive 3 hours away. But it was when I came home for weeks and weeks after, people sent me flowers. People came to my house. And it's just even just, I think, I don't remember the first couple of days just because of being on medication and, having a major surgery, but just the amount of text messages and phone calls I received, like that really means a lot. And it kind of, for lack of better words, it makes it worth it. And if we have to go through this and we have to deal with the bad parts, at least we have other people that make it positive. And I think that's why relationships, whether they're like intimate or just friendships, are so crucial when having an illness, because they're kind of like what makes it worth it. And that's definitely a lack of for better words, but especially in college, not being near my mom and dad, I just think having those people that are going to check up on you and ask you if you're okay, because like Ty said, we're always going to think that we're invincible. We're going to keep trying to do it we want to do. We're going to eat the food that we probably shouldn't eat. And so it's having those people who are kind of like, are you sure you should eat that? And for me, I'm not in an intimate relationship. I'm not dating anyone right now. And so I think for me, the big people in my life are my friends. And like I could probably get choked up right now if I started talking about it too much, but they're the ones who really are. If they make, sometimes we'll do like apartment-wide dinners, and so they'll say, hey, Emily, like, can you like eat this if I make this? And it's the little things that people realize or don't realize that mean the most. And so I just think that that's what other people who don't have IBD and aren't necessarily as educated on it, they don't even need to be. They just need to know that by asking questions and letting the person know that they're there for them, it means so much.
Yeah, I mean, relationships in general, friendship or intimate, is stressful. Especially when you get into college and being able to keep up with studying on top of going out or going out to eat with them for their birthday or whatnot. When you have this other mixture on your plate, being this disease, it's very difficult to manage the disease on top of the stress of the friendship. So you really, I do agree that you really find that who your good friends are through the ones that don't bring the stress of the relationship, who are like, let's not go to the ice cream parlor, let's go bake cookies at your house or something. I don't know. Like Emily said, family dinners between all of my friends that I most certainly call family because they are the ones that look out for me. And like she said, what can you eat if I make X, Y, or Z? What can you eat? How can I make for you better and whatnot? So it definitely shows you who the good ones are, who the ones aren't, and who the ones are far in between.
So I think a big topic that a lot of IBD patients struggle with in middle school and high school is body image. Do you all have any experiences you could talk about that? And then maybe after we talk about that, Michelle can add in her 2 cents, I guess, tips about dealing with body image in IBD patients.
I can go. My story is kind of probably not exactly what you would think. Being diagnosed at 13, I was a huge swimmer, like I mentioned before, so I never ever thought about, I guess, the difference between being in and out of shape, because from the time I was 7 up until I got diagnosed, I had been constantly swimming. I could eat literally whatever I wanted to and never have to worry about it. And also I was younger. But after being diagnosed, I just went from, my weight fluctuated constantly. I would lose weight, but then I would be put on steroids. And so then my body, I wouldn't necessarily gain weight, but my body would look different because my face would puff up. And so a couple times in high school, people would mention my face. But at that point, luckily, I was never on steroids really heavily until about 10th grade. And so at that point, I'd had 2 years to kind of, I guess, accept my diagnosis and kind of figure it out. So it didn't bother me too much. But it's just kind of something, to add on to an everyday high school that you had to worry about. They would just kind of like say, what's wrong with your face? And then acne got really bad. But luckily, I just never let it bother me too much because I luckily had those really good friends. And at the time I was dating a really nice guy. So it's kind of like, I didn't have to worry about what I looked like because I already had a boyfriend. But, so after that, I had surgery when I was 16, like I said, and it pretty much put me into remission. And since then, up until about last year, I had been doing very well. I wasn't swimming as heavily, and I stopped once I came to college. But my first 3 years of college, I pretty much kind of stay the same, look the same. But it's been within the past, I guess, year and a half where I've gained a little bit of weight, and that's just becoming a woman, turning 21, and just, I guess, just my metabolism kind of catching up to me just because I'm definitely not as active as I was in high school. And so rather than having really bad body image issues while I was, not in remission, I'm kind of having them now. And because it is kind of, I guess, when I would have weight fluctuation during a flare up, I would kind of just blame it on that and know it was nothing that I could control. Whereas now, I guess it's kind of weird because my excuse has always kind of been colitis. Now I don't have an excuse. And it wasn't until I talked to some other people who are a part of like the National Council of Collegiate Leaders with the CCFA that I realized there are a few of us struggling with it. And I think really just voicing that and utilizing these resources and these relationships that I had made with these people, I guess just kind of also having someone that said, hey, I deal with this too. And the fact that, when you should never compare yourself to other people. But when I look at these women and I see that, she does not need to be worried about how she looks or, and things like that. And just realizing like, I'm not the only one who has this issue. It's really put into perspective and helped me tremendously. And I think also, like I said, just talking to other people, letting them know what's going on. I mentioned it to my mom. And so I've actually been looking into getting a nutritionist now, because that's something else with IBD. It's not like I can, go eat healthier and eat salads or eat, a bunch of like vegetables and things like that, because those are things that people with IBD can't eat. Like that would make me really sick. And so that's hard because, some of my friends are like trying to watch what they eat, and that consists of, alternating, not eating a cheeseburger and eating like a Caesar salad for dinner. Like if I did that, the next day would not be pretty. And so it's just kind of like having to learn that balance can be frustrating, because in a way we're having to work harder than other people to, quote unquote, be healthy and to look how we want to look. But I think just even in the past 6 months, which it was this summer when I was really, really battling with it, since I've talked to some other people about it, I've noticed that I haven't been thinking about it as much. And you just kind of have to accept your body and realize that, yes, we do have something different and we might have a harder time than other people, but that's kind of what makes us us. And the fact that, we're all here, and it's been almost, I guess, how long has it been? Almost 8 years for me, that we're doing pretty good. And you have to take everything at face value and take it day by day. And that's kind of what you should be happy with, rather than like comparing yourself to other people.
Yeah, I had I still even go through it now, the opposite spectrum of losing lots of weight and being very, very skinny and whatnot. And as a guy, that's kind of not wanted. Guys are supposed to be, macho men and strong and bulky and whatnot. And as someone who also is very active, I played soccer my entire life. I was going to go to high school to play soccer. I had a scholarship and everything. But then Crohn's kind of took that from me because I lost so much weight and I wasn't able to be as fit and whatnot. And so in the beginning, it was really difficult to see myself in this different light, that I now have to own this disease, and I have to eat better and, work out or whatnot to my capabilities, because I won't be able to be the macho man. I won't be able to be the professional college soccer player that I wanted to be. I will now have to watch soccer and coach soccer and whatnot, because I still love it. But the other end of it being on the skinny side was definitely very difficult, not being able to take my shirt off when, as a child, I grew up on the beach, so I always ran around without a shirt. And then after turning 13 and then being diagnosed, it was very hard to not run out onto the football field and leave my shirt on when I was playing with my friends and whatnot, because I didn't want them to see my collarbone or see my hip sticking out a little bit more than what it should be. But it has also been a motivator for me, because, like I said, it has helped me make sure that I'm eating well, and on top of eating well for my Crohn's, but also eating well so I can put on muscle mass, not necessarily trying to gulp down tons of calories, but trying to gulp down more of a protein carb diet. So when I do go work out, it will stick as muscle compared to just run straight through me. So it's been an encouragement. It's been a discouragement. It's the body image thing has been a very hard roller coaster. She has seen it for sure when I'll just not, I'll walk around in sweats and a long sleeve shirt. And that's also another telltale sign that Ty's not doing well, because if Ty's showing that he's losing weight, he's not going to show it. And so I'll do everything that I can to not show it. And it definitely has been a very interesting roller coaster, losing weight and not being able to put it back on and all of that. It's been tough, but it's fun.
I think from at least what I've seen kind of two things. One, like his losing weight. He said like a lot of times he'll just wear basketball shorts, and I'll be like, why don't you like put on some real clothes? And he was like, well, my clothes don't fit me because like I lost too much weight, and now like they just fall off. And I'm like, oh, well now I feel like crap because I just like pointed that out. Like I'm really sorry. So like you kind of have to try and be encouraging, be like it's okay, like yeah, you may have lost some weight, but like you'll get back and like you'll gain the weight. Like we'll work on it. We'll eat better, whatever. And then the other thing, he has a G tube in his stomach. I don't know if there's a proper name for that. That's what I call it. And I think, I mean, I didn't meet him until we were 19 or 20, so I think at that point he had kind of gotten used to it and takes his shirt off whenever he wants and doesn't really care. But you kind of see other people look at it a little funny. I remember there was a time we were at a football game. It was very hot. It was at like it was a 12 o'clock game, and he had taken his shirt off, and I like caught the eye of this woman like staring at it, and I was like, hey, not cool. Like you don't stare at somebody who has something different. And so I just like was like, oh, well, I'm gonna be kind of a brat to her, and I like leaned over and like started like playing with it and like making her feel uncomfortable to like realize like, hey, like just because it's something different, like don't look at it, like it's fine. He's a normal person too. You don't have to stare. And I mean, I didn't see him adjust to that, but like even I like get bothered when people look at it. It's like, what are you looking at? Like it's just there. Like it's not big, it's not obnoxious. You just take it for what it is, and that's it. So I think even I get a little frustrated seeing people like judge him because like I mean I know what it is. They don't know what it is, but you just have to be encouraging and be like, well, I like your G tube. Like I've gotten used to it and like it's there, and so like to me it'd be weird if it wasn't. And so you just have to be as encouraging as you can. Let them know like it's okay if your body changes. It's okay if it's a little different. It just is what it is.
Yeah, getting past the G tube was also another tough part. Because when I got the G tube place, I was at the worst I could have ever been at, and then when I did get better, I started to be the old me and run around with a shirt off, but there was this weird object in my stomach now. I couldn't, play soccer or do what I wanted to do because I was watching out for it also. But it has also brought me some comical relief because I will see people's faces just, what is that kind of face? And it'll spark a conversation, or I'll just start cracking up because I know what it is. It's not something that's for anyone to worry about. It's something that's part of me. It's my best friend, I guess, compared to her. And it is, don't judge me for it. And if you're going to judge me for it, then I'm just going to keep walking.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I have a port, and I used to be very self-conscious about it because it's right here, and it's kind of in an odd location, so not a lot of people are familiar with what a port is. So I'll like kid around about it because my scar is a little funky, so sometimes I'll tell people it's like a hickey, and they'll start laughing, and I'll be like, no, actually, like it's a port. And I'll explain to them what it is, so it's kind of a nice conversation starter. But I'm very type A, so not being able to be in control of my weight was really hard for me. And people just making innocent comments like, "Oh, Kaylee, you look good. You look like you put on some weight," or "Have you like been changing your diet? You look like you've lost some weight," and it's out of your control. So it's kind of an awkward. You don't really know how to respond to that, and it makes you feel really self-conscious. So I think it's like one component of whoever you're in a relationship with or your friends understanding that it's out of your control and just to be supportive. But I think like the most important aspect, at least for me, was just coming to terms with my own body image and knowing that it's out of my control and just accepting that and not letting my IBD define me, and kind of let it drive me. I now like work really closely with a dietitian and try to be in control of what I can be in control of. And my weight changes and how my body responds to things out of my control. And I think it's way easier said than done. Coming to terms with your IBD is definitely hard, and it's a work in progress. It's never like, oh, I've come to terms with it, like I'm totally okay with it, because it changes every day. Michelle, did you want to talk a little bit about your experience with patients and body image?
Sure. So I'm probably going to repeat several of the things that you all talked about. And, we already talked about the fact that the symptoms of IBD, especially those related to bowel movements, that they can be intrusive and embarrassing. And so that can subsequently negatively impact body image. In fact, I split my time between working with patients and doing research. And there's actually kind of an emerging body of research specifically among youth and young adults with IBD that has looked at health-related quality of life and body image. And what it has shown so far is that body image, especially things related to, whether there's growth delays or short stature or weight gain, weight loss, physical symptoms like diarrhea, for example, and then also frequent visits to the bathroom. Those are all primary concerns related to body image that we see among young adults with IBD. You've each talked about kind of weight fluctuations. So the weight loss that accompanies a flare or complications from the disease or weight gain that's usually experienced with steroids can also negatively body image, as you guys have mentioned. And then also, if, at some point in your life, either previously or currently, if you've encountered negative feedback from other people or teasing or bullying or those types of things as a result of changes in your weight, as a result of growth delays, those types of things, and that can also place young adults with IBD at risk of poor negative body image. And I think one of you mentioned kind of that things are outside of your control, and fluctuations in weight due to the disease or due to the treatment can certainly feel beyond one's control, which can be very stressful, frustrating, and also overwhelming. To reiterate kind of what I mentioned earlier too, is the presence of a G-tube or an ostomy or a fissure. Those types of things can also negatively impact body image, especially if you've received negative feedback from others, whether it's friends or whether it's, people that you've been in intimate relationships with. And also, especially if you as the individual with IBD perceive that your ostomy or fissure, those types of things, that those are unpleasant or embarrassing or those types of things. And one of the things that we see too is that in some cases, low or negative body image can actually deter an individual with IBD from pursuing an intimate relationship or even from just entering the dating scene. So I know, Kaylee, you also asked about kind of tips for ways that you can improve body image, those types of things. So a couple of things that I can put out there. One of them, and this is a discussion that I have with every single patient, is to remain involved in normal activity. Whether that's going to school or going to work or exercise or participating in extracurricular activities, whatever those might be. Those are all really important for managing the demands of IBD and for life to feel normal, because we all know that life can change quite significantly when you live with IBD. But staying engaged in your normal activity, it increases your sense of connectedness with other people. It's rewarding, it's empowering, and all of that can positively impact one's body image, but also your sense of well-being and quality of life. Another tip that I can offer too is, I think you can all speak to this much better than I can, but I think it can unfortunately be very, very easy completely ignoring or forgetting other aspects of yourself or other aspects of your looks, of your personality. Right. And so I would just encourage young adults with IBD to consider all of those pieces as opposed to just the disease that you have, because the disease that you have doesn't define you as a person. Another thing in terms of a tip for kind of just fostering or maintaining a healthy body image is to do activities that make you feel attractive, that make you feel healthy, that make you feel strong. Just one example for young women, that may be getting a pedicure, getting a manicure, right? That usually makes us feel good about ourselves. It makes us feel cute and attractive and pretty. So those types of things, or getting dressed up and going out with friends, or getting some exercise, those are all, perfect ways, simple ways that we can just boost our sense of self-esteem or body image. Another thing that a couple of you mentioned is working with a dietitian or a nutritionist. Sometimes that can really go a long way into just learning what your body's going to respond well to, and oftentimes over time that can certainly feed into a healthy body image. And then really the last thing that I might suggest as a tip for improving your self-image, honesty, is to just surround yourself by people who love and support you. That alone, that verbal reassurance, that social connectedness, that social support can go a really long way, and it can feel very gratifying. So those, I think, are the key tips and strategies that I can offer to improve or maintain a good, healthy body image.
Yeah, so I really like how you talked about surrounding yourself by a good support system. But I think it's really easy, especially for me, I've fallen subject to it, is kind of letting my IBD consume me, like especially eating out. Like I get social anxiety about eating out. Even if I go to a restaurant that I consider safe and I know I can get, a plain chicken breast or potato, I'm like constantly nervous that they're going to mess it up. What if I don't feel well afterwards? Do I know that there's a bathroom I can go into? How are they going to react if I have to go to the bathroom? So I think like another important aspect of relationships is like beginning relationships with people. I mean, like what goes through your mind when you're first meeting people? Do you tell them about your IBD right away? Like what if something comes up, and how you all deal with that?
My biggest thing when starting relationships with people, especially for me, like if they're guys, is worrying about going over to their house for the first time, or their house, apartment, whatever, just with having to use the bathroom. Because I know a lot of times, I guess ways dates work is like you go eat dinner and then, or go eat a meal and then you go watch a movie, or you go to their apartment, or you go to their whatever, and then you go hang out. And obviously after we go out to eat, we're gonna have to use the bathroom. And for me, you never know if things are going to be like, if their bathroom is right next to the living room, or if their bathroom is echoey, or if their bathroom like doesn't have a fan. Like that's what these things, like it consumes me and I freak out. And and there's kind of like, if I haven't told the person about it, or even if I have told the person, I think that there's also this whole, I guess, idea that like girls don't poop or something, and so that always just kind of worries me, because I don't want the guy, especially guys, because I think I get a little bit weird with girls, but I'm totally okay with being like, look, I gotta poop, like hold on, like or I'll just say like, I'm sorry, like if it's loud, just something, or like the smell or anything. And I haven't figured out the solution for it yet, but what definitely helps is it sounds so silly, because it's silly. I literally will tell the person, like I'll just be like, especially if their apartment is small, or if like the closest bathroom is like near the room that we're in, I'll either go to another bathroom and I'll tell the person that like they either need, if the TV's not on, that they need to turn the TV on, or just something. Like I'll just be like really honest about it, and I'll say that, like because most of the time I'm really, really straightforward about it. I mentioned before, for me, colitis just works its way into conversations inevitably, and rather than like not mention it, I feel like it's such a big part of my life. And luckily I've been able to turn it positive, so it's not like it haunts me. It's such a big part of my life that I like to talk about it, and so I tell people about it, because I also, obviously we're all advocates for the disease, so any chance to educate someone on it, I'm all for it. And so, it's very likely that person knows I have this disease, but they don't really know that like you poop 5 or 6 times a day. And so I would just kind of be straight up, and I'll be like, hey, like I have to use the bathroom really bad, and like I would try and wait until I go home, but either like, can you like go, like I'll be like, I'm gonna go to the other bathroom, like just so you know. Or sometimes I'll just go, if it's not weird, I'll just go. But then how sometimes, a lot of times, there's like a bedroom and the bathroom is connected to it. It makes me so nervous. So I'll either like just use the fan, or I'll tell them that they need to like go on the other, I just think communication is so important, and that's the most awkward part. But once, I guess the key is like, you need to like seem confident when you say it. And like, I'll kind of laugh about it, but I'll be like, no, like I'm serious. Like I literally can't use the bathroom unless like you can't hear me. And so that's actually like, this is one of the first times I've like been 100% honest about telling people that. So you guys are the first to know that. But I mean, whatever, it's all about being comfortable too. And if you're not comfortable using the bathroom, like chances are like that stress is just going to make it worse. And you guys know that. Like I remember this was more in high school. I was at like my boyfriend's house at the time, and he like, so it was like his family's house, and they had because it was like, you know, a big house, it wasn't an apartment or anything. They had one of those bathrooms that's just like a downstairs bathroom, like a smaller bathroom, and it's like right there, and like the whole family was like in the living room watching a movie, and I was just like, I gotta go upstairs, like I'm sorry. And like his whole family knew, and like chances are like it might be weird at first, but then like what I find is that the whole time you're using the bathroom, you think about how you just told them that, but they're not thinking about how you're using the bathroom, just because that's kind of weird. So I think it's just, you got to just suck it up and tell them, and it's going to be okay. And it is awkward, but I really think like once you just like point out the elephant in the room, like you realize it's not the end of the world. Like you have it. And that is, I guess, the biggest lesson or the biggest thing that I ever learned was when my doctor, this is when I was first or I guess a year after I was diagnosed, I was having a really hard time just kind of accepting the fact that I'm like, I have a disease. I can't do everything that I want to do. I can't, you know, I need to alter things, but at the end of the day, there's nothing that you can't do without altercations or without without having maybe working a little bit harder. But yeah, so once I just kind of like it's kind of tough love. You just kind of have to look at yourself and say, okay, yes, I'm sick. Yes, I have a chronic illness. As of right now, there's not a cure and it's not going away. So I've got to figure out what works for me. And so far, just being straight up and honest with people and telling them what I need. And I guess on the flip side, if I were to ever be with someone and them not understand that or kind of give me a hard time about using the bathroom, then like, if anything, that saves time for later in the relationship where I find out that he's a jerk or something. And so if there's any pro to that, I would say, yeah, you kind of find out if the guy's a good guy in the beginning rather than later on. And you don't waste your time.
It shows your good friends and your bad friends, that's for sure. Because there have been plenty of times when it's even like a party and I've had to go to the bathroom during a house party or whatever, and I've had friends stick up for me because, you know, they're having a good time. They all need to go to the bathroom. So do I, but my bathroom's going to take a little bit longer, and I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be shouting out from the bathroom when they're knocking on the door. But I do hear my friends at the party saying, stop knocking on the door, he's going to the bathroom. And then when I walk out, it's like,
what's like, you know, the biggest thing you have to adjust to, like dating someone with Crohn's, and my immediate response is like, you have to accept the poop. Like straight up, you have to get used to it. And yeah, we all do it, you know. I mean, it makes it great for me that like he poops all the time. I don't have to pretend like I don't do it because his is worse. And so, you know, like you get to a point where like it's a part of their life. You do it too, but for like the patient, like it's definitely a bigger aspect. And if you just have to get used to it, I mean, I'm open enough that I didn't really care. But like, you know, he'll go to the bathroom. I'll be like, hey, how was your poop? Is it like, how is it okay? Like, are you good? Like, are you healthy right now? And like, we'll talk about it because like that's part of, you know, he needs to be able to express like, you know, what's going on. And I mean, I don't think anything about it, but I really think being open about it is the best thing because I think it would make it more awkward if I can like tell that he like doesn't want to talk about it. Then I'm like, okay, like what am I supposed to do? But I think the more open you are, like the easier it is for like them to accept it. Like it makes it easier for me to accept it if he's just very like open and blunt, like, hey, I gotta poop. Like, all right, go ahead. I'm not gonna stop you.
That's something that I think I take for granted too, is how much time my friends spend being patient waiting on me to use the bathroom. Oh, yes. And I'm very hypocritical about it because that moment that we're in the mall or we're at a movie or we're leaving a restaurant and I have to wait on them, I kind of get impatient, but I can pretty much bet anytime I go out to eat at a restaurant, I'm going to have to use the bathroom before we actually leave the restaurant. It doesn't matter if we're, you know, if we need to be on time to get somewhere. And so I just think that we just keep reiterating that. I think that's, if you're someone who does not have IBD, that's something that you need. Like, can you be patient? Can you accept that there are times that you might have a date scheduled or you might be on a time like crunch and that person might have to either ditch out on the date or have to use the bathroom in the middle of something, might have to, you know, kind of call in sick to whatever you're supposed to do. And that's just something that I guess the other person has to be able to accept. And that's coming from my side where I'm not really dating, or I'm not dating anyone right now. I think I've kind of settled for guys before because they're not rude about it, but they don't exactly understand and they don't want to talk about it. And I think ultimately what I look for what I am looking for in a significant other is someone who is going to be open and like willing to talk about it. And I just haven't found that person yet. And so I think just like, I guess Ty and Paige are a great example of just like how it can be and how it should be. And that, if you're sick, you should never, I guess, lower your standards or settle for someone who isn't going to be willing to like work with you, if that makes sense. And I guess that's kind of like something that I haven't thought about that much, but I mean, it should be. No one should treat you differently or like should, not accept, like, I guess, like, our condition, because like, it's not like we chose to get sick. It's not like we, we're like, I'm going to figure this out because I want to. No, we had to, we were forced to grow up. We were forced to, learn what works and what doesn't work. And so if someone does care about you, then I think, he or she should be willing to roll with the punches just like you are. And that's what I think, Paige, like, you're awesome for being so understanding. And it just really, it sets a great example for everybody because y'all are happy. Like, it doesn't matter. You can figure it out.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, I used the analogy I was given my Crohn's disease. Like, I was given, like, my hair color or my terrible eyesight. But I think I used to, like, my Crohn's disease really affects my energy level. It affects me in the ileum, so I don't absorb iron well or B12. So, like, yesterday after class, I went in my car to drive home, and I fell asleep in my car. Like, I never drove home. I fell asleep for, like, 45 minutes in my car. And my friend texted me. I was supposed to meet up with her, and it was just so nice being able to be honest with her. I was like, I'm so tired. I literally just fell asleep in my car for 45 minutes. I'm so sorry. And she was so understanding. And it's just so nice to be able to get to that point in a relationship with somebody where you're able to just be honest with them and for them to just be understanding of your disease and not like make you feel bad about it because it's not, again, like we chose to have the disease. It's just a part of me. But yeah, I completely agree. So I think communication and honesty is really important. Michelle, do you have anything to add to that or like any closing tips or advice that we didn't touch on?
Yeah, so I think to reiterate what you've each talked about is hands down, I think the most important thing is to be honest and upfront, right? And to keep in mind that with any relationship, just as much as you're adjusting to the new relationship, so is the other person, right? And then sometimes, I mean, it makes sense if you have found a good approach to talking about your disease with your friends, then maybe taking that same approach when you're trying to talk about your disease with, a potential significant other. So, and then I would say that if you're unsure about what or how much to disclose, sometimes what helps is asking the other person what questions they have or what they want to know. And maybe that can kind of guide that discussion. And it keeps you from disclosing too much information and then looking back and thinking, oh, shoot, I should have never said this. I would also say, in terms of communicating aspects about your health and your disease is to keep it simple. In the beginning, there's no need to include every single detail about your IBD. You'll have plenty of conversations as the relationship progresses. If it's the right relationship. You've all talked about the fact that one of the perks of IBD is that in many ways, it's a good screener for a good friendship or a good relationship. But again, just sharing yourself with honesty and confidence, and I would say keeping a significant other in the dark usually doesn't work. The other person's much more likely to be able to provide timely and appropriate support in a non-judgmental manner if at the very least they have a general sense of what's going on. And so again, you don't necessarily have to in the beginning disclose every single detail, and really keeping in mind that people will take their cues from you. So if you maintain a positive attitude, you'll likely be met with support and a similarly positive attitude, whereas pessimism or judgment of yourself is much more likely to to potentially cause stress or concern or, again, pessimism in that significant other. And so really, I just can't stress enough the importance of being open and honest. And not just with your significant other or somebody that you're interested in, but also, I think another piece of it is being open and honest with your GI doctor. And so if you experience symptoms that interfere with your daily function or symptoms that interfere with sexual intimacy or sexual function, those types of things, those are conversations that you probably need to have with your gastroenterologist, because again, they're not going to be able to provide any support or intervention unless those conversations happen. And I would say too, for any concerns that young adults with IBD have about being able to keep up with a significant other, I would say to plan in advance. And so what that might mean is finding out in advance where the restrooms are located in a restaurant or in shopping areas, or, if you're going to be taking long trips, finding out where restrooms are located along the route. Carrying extra clothing, toilet paper, wipes, in the event that you might need those. And then, again, like you've all said, really the best route is typically just being honest and open and straightforward.
I agree. I think just figuring out what works for you is also going to work for someone else. And I can't, I guess, reiterate enough what Michelle said about if you are confident with it, there's no reason that someone else should be comfortable and confident as well. And if they're not, that just means that they're not the right person for you, whether it's a friend or a significant other. And I think that, everyone, IBD patients and non-IBD patients, deal with insecurities. And so there's no reason that we're different than anyone else. And I think, if you're watching this and you've been struggling with that, there are so many people out there that are willing to talk and that are going to care about you. And so you shouldn't, I guess, ever give up or be bitter about anything, because that just means that they're not the right person for you.
Yeah, I really agree with that, especially being from the other side. It's kind of, two people with IBD, don't assume that somebody's not going to accept every part of your disease, start with the little things, obviously, but if they're going to understand one thing, we're human beings, if we see that you're going through a hard time, most people aren't going to be rude, and they're not going to be like, oh, you're faking it. So don't think that people aren't going to accept you immediately. See how it goes and get a feel for it. But most people are going to be like, oh, I totally understand. This is a serious thing. And most people will fully accept the things you go through if you tell them about it. And so I think don't be afraid to be honest and communicate with people, and don't be afraid of what their reaction is going to be.
I think one thing that is really positive when it comes to relationships, friendship, or intimacy or not, is how much we will encourage them to not only better themselves, but to see also a really great light. And one of my friends recently came to me and told me how inspiring it is that I can just go day by day and put a smile on. And I think it's really great to see the other end of the other side of the relationship and see, even though my time is tough and rough and whatnot, how much encouragement I give my friends to make sure that they are still striving through school, but on top of thriving through school, seeing how happy and successful they are throughout life and whatnot. So I think that's one thing that I've seen that's really positive and great on the other end of IBD, and how much we can brighten their day through encouragement and whatnot.
IBD has taught me a lot about myself, and it's all things that we've touched on tonight, just communication and honesty and finding those true friends and good support system. There's a lot you can't control about the disease, but I think just being in control of what you can control is really important. And I hope whoever is watching has, taken away some helpful tips and has learned some from our webinar. So I hope you all enjoyed. If you want more info, feel free to visit our website at www.ccfa.org or visit our Campus Connection page, which is geared towards young adult and college age students with IBD. Or feel free to call our IBD Help Center at 888-694-8872. Thank you for watching.